Season greetings, Mason Storm here. On today's episode we're going to look at making some festive soft pretzels. Stay tuned to see how they're made. Pretzels, despite how they seem, are actually very similar to make as bagels. Our ingredients to make pretzels consist of 2 teaspoons of salt, 1 tablespoon of honey, 1 package of yeast, instant yeast, 4 cups of flour, I'm using hard flour, 1½ cup of warm water. I'm going to start out like I do with all my yeast related bread videos and propagate the yeast. Dump the yeast in the warm water, stir it, wait a few minutes, make sure that it's still alive. Now we'll get out our big mixing bowl here and we'll proceed to add in our flour. And once we're done adding our flour, we can throw in our salt as well as our honey. Perfect. Now there's a couple ways you can go about mixing this. You can do the add a little bit of water, stir it, add a little bit of water, stir it, add a little bit of water, and stir it. Or you can do what I did here, which is just dump it all in all at once and then stir it. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to dump all the water in, give it a quick stir, and watch the batter, or the dough I should say, come together. At first it's going to seem too wet, then it's going to seem too dry, but then, after you mix it for a while, you're going to find that it's still a little bit wet, but it's perfect. That's kind of the way you want your dough to be. And then we'll just keep mixing that for a while until it starts to really hold together. If you keep mixing it long enough, you can eventually get it to pull off of the sides, but yeah, I've kind of given up on that. So I'm just going to dump it out on the counter and I'm going to start the kneading process. And I find kneading works a lot better at mixing the stuff up than it does in the bowl, but the bowl does a good job holding everything together, so you limit the mess. So I'm just going to do my standard kneading technique and just keep working the dough in. And eventually all this powdery stuff that's on the countertop now will start to combine into the dough. And that's exactly what we want to have happen. We want it all in one uniform lump of dough. Okay, now that our dough is pretty much done being kneaded, we're going to put it in a bowl. We're going to put a little bit of oil in the bottom of the bowl so it doesn't stick to it. Give it the old rub around to make sure the bowl is nice and covered. And then we'll stick the dough in there, throw a towel over top, and stick it in the oven with the oven light on for about half an hour, 45 minutes. Like when we made bagels, we're going to boil the pretzels. We're going to boil them in water that has baking soda. So we're going to add baking soda into our water a little bit later. We got our big pot on the stove. We're going to crank our temperature up to maximum, not minimum, and let our water boil away. Or at least start to. Okay, we'll take our stuff out of the oven. There we are. It's significantly bigger now than it was before. And we'll just dump this out on the table here with a little bit of flour. And then we'll proceed to divide it up. Okay, now that it's on the counter, I'm actually going to roll it out flat because I didn't really know how many pretzels this recipe would make. This is just the same as our bagel one. I've never actually used it to make pretzels, but after rolling it out I figured that 6 was probably a good number. So I'll cut it in half one direction and then a couple cross cuts, and that'll get me 6 pieces that are relatively close to almost being the same size. Of course, weighing them out and dividing them more properly would probably work a lot better. So here I am trying to use a rolling pin to make a round thing, even though it's making it flat. So that was kind of the wrong direction, so I had to kind of re-knead that a little bit and start over. What you want to do is you want to roll it into a nice long string, and then we can, once it's long enough, you can kind of fold it into a pretzel shape thing for our pretzels, which is easier said than done, but it can be done, and it's not that difficult of a thing to do. But the first one was definitely the most difficult, but once I got the hang of it, once I got the first one kind of figured out and kind of got it pretzel shaped, oh yeah, there we go. That's starting to look like something. Then it was easier to do the rest of them. Okay, I'll just take that pretzel, set it on my sheet pan, And then I'll start doing this again 5 more times. And as you can see, the second one went a heck of a lot better than the first one. It was pretty much done instantaneously. So that's definitely the technique, is just to go straight into rolling it into a long log and then just tying it. Try to keep it the same diameter all the way across, but once you get going, it goes pretty quick. The technique on my final pretzels were vastly superior to my first ones. And that's good, which means that the next time I make pretzels, it'll go even smoother. We'll have nice, smooth pretzels. Okay, there's our final pretzel-shaped pretzel dough thing. So now we can go over to our pot, which is boiling. And now we're just going to add our baking soda to our pot. And it's going to bubble up like crazy, so we'll give it a quick little bit of a stir. Now what we're going to do in this process, now that we have our boiling water, is we're going to use our slotted spoon to slowly descend our pretzels into the water. We're going to cook them for 30 seconds. We're going to flip them over. We're going to cook them another 30 seconds. This is kind of like a pre-cooking process. Not entirely sure what the baking soda does, but I looked at a lot of different recipes for making pretzels like this, and it seemed that seemed to be the thing to do. When we made the bagels, we just boiled them. We didn't use baking soda. Okay, now we're just going to accelerate the process just to make sure that all of our bagels can be done in a reasonable amount of time. And I noticed that we had a lot of fizzing in the water from the baking soda being added to this, and there was a couple parts where I had to kind of give it a couple stirs before putting them in just to get the bubbles down so it wouldn't boil over. Our last step is going to be an egg wash, so I'm just going to crack an egg into a bowl, give it a good beating, and then we're going to use this egg to cover the pretzels. And as you can see, they're a lot more puffy now that they've been boiled. And I'm just going to use the brush here, and I'm just going to cover all the pretzels with the egg wash. And this will make it so that when we cook this, they'll all be nice and golden brown and look a lot more pretzel-like. I don't know if it really affects the flavor at all, but it definitely looks pretty. And a lot of food, it's about how pretty it is before you eat it. So now what we're going to do is we're going to cover these with salt. And I was sprinkling it on here. I don't know if you could really see it because I think my hand was above where the camera was. But put on a little bit more salt than you think, because I thought I put a reasonable amount on, and I obviously didn't have enough salt because they didn't have that salty bite that I'm so used to. But we'll toss this into a 450 degree preheated oven, and we're going to cook them for about 10 minutes. I ended up cooking mine like 15, and that got them nice and golden brown like you see here. Just keep an eye on them when you're cooking them. I really enjoyed how these came out in the end. The lack of salt that I put on them was actually a blessing, because when I had them with some cream cheese, cheese ball, they tasted fantastic. So let me know how you eat your pretzels, especially soft ones like this. And if you like my content or like to see more of it, please like and subscribe. And until next time, stay awesome.